Welcome to another episode of Legal for Tech, the podcast. So, guys, you do recognize my voice here. It is always Rosie. And as I've said many, many times, this is just for students and young professionals who are very interested in anything that has to do with technology. And yes, it's regulation. So, today I'm joined by my colleague and dear friend. Hi, Giacomo. Nice to see you.
Hi, Rosie. Nice to see you as well.
It's so nice to have you here because I'm finally getting to ask people about TikTok, which is like my great passion. So I'm super happy to welcome here on the podcast Luisa Belzung and Julia Kickel, who are calling us from Austria, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Hi.
Exactly.
It's great to see you both. So I'm going to start with Luisa and then I'm going to ask Julia to keep going. Guys, why are you here today? What path of life brought you here? And why am I so excited to see you?
Hi, I'm very happy to be here. I work in consumer protection at the Austrian Chamber of Labor. And my focus at work is digitalization. So I'm looking at all the problems you can see in the digital sphere. I have my past is in journalism, but also in research. And since January, I'm focused on policy making. So I'm trying to make like evidence-based policy impact, which is something that needs studies like the one we've done on TikTok. And yes, this brought me here.
And hi, my name is Julia Krickel, and I'm currently leading the research projects at the ÖIAT, which is a small Austrian nonprofit organization. We're dealing with consumer protection and also the safety of consumers and everybody online, so users in general. And we do a lot of research projects on the prevention of cybercrime, but also consumer protection and general consumer safety. I do focus a lot on social media, the safety of social media, and also artificial intelligence. And together with Louise, we did this research on TikTok and especially stealth advertising on TikTok, so hidden advertising, and what it entails and what the issues are for users.
And that's why we also called you. So Rosie has been talking a lot about this report that you wrote. That is super interesting. And since our listeners may not have read it, could you give us an overview of what is it about and how you reached, if you reached what you wanted to reach?
We at Consumer Protection, we have a lot of complaints on TikTok, mainly from parents whose children have spent too much money on TikTok, on TikTok's virtual currency. So we knew about a part of the problems, and the feeling we had is that in the public discourse, a lot of talk is about the problems on TikTok related to radical or violent content. But TikTok as a platform is also a very commercial platform. There's a lot of advertisement. So our motivation was, okay, let's look into TikTok, but ask different questions, look at the commercial content on TikTok, and are minors properly protected from misleading advertisement, from not from disguised advertisement. And that's where Julia stepped in with research, and it's very, very valuable for us because it's something that also on the international level, it's not looked at enough, because TikTok has, let's say, there are like a lot of topics that raise more awareness, that are more perhaps pressing, that seem more pressing. But we, from consumer protection, you see that this the advertisement is often the beginning of the problems. You know, you have advertisement for fraud, you have advertisement for food that is unhealthy, you have advertisement for supplements for young boys, etc. So you have advertisement very often is something we don't look at. The pressure from industry is quite high, and this is the motivation for the study.
And maybe I'll just step in right here and talk a little bit about what we did. So there were 4 of us working on this study, and we basically, the first thing we did was spending hours on TikTok and looking at which content that we find, which content is shown to us. We also created some accounts where we set our age to be minors. So we set our age to 16 or younger. The first thing we did was spending hours on TikTok and looking at which content that we find, which content is shown to us. We also created some accounts where we set our age to be minors. So we set our age to 16 or younger. And what we saw is that we still saw a lot of ads. So we saw tons of advertising, and then we started to check if these advertisements that we were shown were particularly targeted to minors, which they were not. However, you're still able to target minors via, for example, proxy variables. So it is possible to reach minors via TikTok and also via ads. And what we also saw is just what Louise already mentioned, this complete, like this overwhelm of commercial content. So a lot of companies are on TikTok to present their brand, to make their brand, to just be there and be found, be seen. Also have this kind of create this image of being a cool brand and being desirable, right? So they have this content which is clearly commercial, right? Because it is promoting a certain lifestyle, a certain brand, but it is not in any way marked or labeled as commercial content, which is something that we see as very problematic as well.
And can I add something also?
Absolutely.
I think we talk about social platforms very often, focusing on social interaction. And what we don't talk enough is that they've become like self-contained spaces, self-contained internet. So you have companies that have accounts there, you have media outlets that have accounts there, and you have users who use these social platforms for everything. They use it for getting the news, to exchange with their friends, to buy stuff. So they don't leave. It's like a small world on its own, and so it's extremely important to look at these platforms. And now on the European level, we have welcomed the Digital Services Act as something that decided, okay, we need to assure that platforms take like appropriate and proportionate measures to protect minors from illegal content, from violent content, but also to ensure like a high level of privacy, of safety, of security for minors. And this opens up a lot of questions, and there is like a need for evidence. And perhaps this is also the motivation you had for this podcast, but there is a lack of evidence from the practices on these platforms. The platforms are quite closed. Very often, those making the laws are probably not the main users of the platforms, and we need examples. We need an understanding of all this inner functioning of these platforms to properly assess if the legal protection that is being introduced is enough. And I think this the part of the DSA that says, okay, no advertisement should be based on no advertisement directed at minors should be based on personal data is like a very good example, because it seems like a perfect legislation. You'd say, okay, we don't want minors to be targeted. Great, everyone will agree, and you might feel that it's enough, you've done your job. And then you look at how technology works nowadays, and you know that you don't need personal data to target someone personally. We know this from prices, we know this from recommender systems. So if I want to target a 12-year-old, well, either I don't choose any target group. This is something that we've seen now in our study. So you say, I don't have a specific target group. And if you don't choose an age target group, well, you will have like the age group that is not, that cannot be targeted. So it will be the minors. But you can also work using like proxy variables, meaning a 12-year-old will be interested perhaps in Minecraft, a 40-year-old less. So if you choose, the kind of, you say, okay, I want my advertisement to be displayed to someone who has searched, who has watched this kind of videos with this, you have like the personal advertisement. So it's very important, to look into these platforms, because sometimes we have now legislation coming that has like the best intention but misses the point, because it's become more complicated, and the point with the personal data is I think a very crucial point.
Thank you for this particular information, because of course we all look at the DSA. It was a literally life-changing legislation considering what was coming before. So of course we all thank the European Union for having given us the DSA, but the enforcement of it depends strictly on how these algorithms and how these recommendation systems and how these platforms, the structure, the engineering around it, literally the infrastructure of the platform works. And it's great to have people that understand both sides. So the legislation works that way, the platform works this way. We can put them together and see where the gap lies and where the, let's say, not so legal, not illegal behavior, if we want to put it that way, actually kind of seeds itself. I have a question that may sound a bit like I'm playing devil's advocate, which is something I tend to do in this podcast, apparently. Um, if I go on the street, I come by a toy shop, of course, I mean, children will be more drawn to it. They're not doing any advertisement based on profiling, of course, especially not on personal data. It's just that, like, toy shops look very appealing to children, potentially not to me, unless there's some Disney content displayed. In that case, I may stop. Why is it particularly dangerous and concerning when it happens on platforms and not in real life? Like, what kind of difference do you see when you talk about consumer protection? Why is platforms so bad?
Yes, I can. I like taking examples from real life, offline life, to compare and to think about social media. I think this is like a very good example. But I'd say, if you take an example from offline, take an example from media. And if I look at television, it's very clear. Looking at television, they have very strict rules on which kind of advertisement is shown at which time of the day. And these rules, they make sense. Sometimes we don't, sometimes they're like, you can have this point and say, okay, well, the advertisement, is it like that bad? Because like children are allowed to have like wishes, to dream of things. This is like, I guess, the marketing perspective. And it's not the point from consumer protection, actually. The problem is that the advertisement is from a child perspective. You cannot properly make a difference between something is advertised, so the way it's presented, it's an exaggerated way of presenting something, and something is an information. And so children are very like a target group that is very often targeted, because they are the ones that can influence their parents, they can influence all the peers, and they are very easy to get with advertisement. So I think this is like the history of protection. What we've seen in the last, let's say, decade, is that the gap between how media is regulated when it's traditional media and how media is regulated when it's online media is huge. And I understand that, companies, media companies, they tell us, okay, that's not okay. We have like on a broadcasting, we have to make all kinds of restrictions for content. And then you open social media apps and it's everything is here. They say, yeah, we cannot, it's users are uploading this, so we cannot control it. And then you have all the other companies who have like the ethical boards and all this. So there is like a gap that needs to be addressed also, I guess, from an economic point of view, because of course there's like a legitimate interest have marketing on your products, and it's a legitimate interest to make money with advertisement if you're a company, a media company as well. But it's very important to that children and young people have trust in media, that they trust the information they see. This is important for democratic processes. So it's very important that they see a difference between this is a journalistic thing, this is a communication that is like information, and this is advertisement. And then they, if you have like a properly labeled advertisement, it might still be something that you like. Why not? But you need to label it to allow users that don't have like the capacity to see the difference, to acknowledge the difference.
Yeah, and I would like to add on that, on exactly the point that Louise made, which I think is the kind of core of the issue. In traditional media, you do have this clear distinction. So there are rules and regulations that have to really separate this information content or other content from advertising content. You need to label even in series and films if there's product placement, right? And this is legislation that has been around for a long time, and this is why also there's like certain jingles in radio that have you distinguish between ads and information that you hear. So we have these things that are so kind of normalized to us in this kind of traditional media that maybe we don't even realize anymore, but these distinctions exist and they're very important. And they do not exist for social media in this way because the advertisement labeling is just so insufficient. And I would also like to come back to your toy store example. And I think if we play around with this idea for a second, you just do not spend hours upon hours standing in front of a toy shop, right? You pass it by quickly. But if we look at how much time children and young people and kind of everybody is spending online, and especially on platforms like TikTok, that's a lot. That's hours upon hours. That's not just passing by a toy store. That is seeing thousands of ads if you spend, let's say, 2 hours on TikTok. And we know that kids spend up to 3, 4 hours on TikTok a day. So it's just the amount of ads and the amount of commercial content that children and minors are exposed to that is also at the core of the issue, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Sorry, please.
Yeah, I think there's like a little point, to say something very positive about the DSA is also that the DSA has introduced transparency obligations for social platforms. And this is something, we are very happy about because it allows us to look into the practices. Mostly what happens on social media to a large extent will be commercial practices that might be okay. Why not? But we need, to have the insight into what happens. To, for instance, understand why certain problems arise with consumers. How does it come? Because people don't, we don't have like a complaint of parents telling us they know why the money was spent. We don't have complaints
They
that have
hardly
like
ever
a
know,
detailed
to be
string.
honest.
Yes, exactly. So this is something, so people cannot reconstruct what happened. Very often, a lot of problem with internet fraud. Weeks later, you will notice that what you've ordered online is not arriving, and then you will want your product. So you will file a complaint, but you have no idea what led you to this online shop. It was an ad somewhere in the internet. So the transparency obligations of the DSA are very, very important. They're like a very important tool for consumer protection as well. And this is why transparency for advertisement does not work if the content has not been flagged as advertisement. So the transparency obligations do not work if the companies, if the influencers, if the users do not have the tools to flag something as commercial content or just don't do it. So I think the purpose of our report as well was to say we welcome these transparency obligations, but to have the social platforms adequately transparent on the commercial practices, there's a lot of work to be done on the other side, not only on the side that the Commission is already looking at, saying how are these databases searchable, but also to say, is the content within the database? And what we say is that a lot of commercial content is not in the database. So we won't see it. So this is also sometimes, we would like, the content to be properly documented so that we can have a look at it.
I'm going to bring you another scenario. This time, I promise it's all social media based. The process of going from being a person that's on social media to the becoming an influencer can be a long process. I've seen it myself with like some personal experience, not related necessarily to me, but let's say that, for example, food influencers, they're great. They're really helpful when you go to a new city and you don't know where to go and have something to eat. The food influencer becomes someone that advertises a restaurant, for example, after they've gained enough followers that signal to that restaurant, oh, I should invite this person to dinner and pay her dinner so that she can then take a video and advertise it on her page. In the process of getting there, the food influencer technically advertises other places, telling people, oh, I've been to Venice, say, I've been to these 5 restaurants, I've had these 5 different dishes, this is my rating. The purpose of that food influencer is not advertising necessarily, it's to gain followers with her sharing of experiences. She's acting like a peer reviewer. My question in this case is, do you consider that as advertisement? Do you think it should go in one of these registers that you were talking about? And do you think that platforms should do something actively about it so to comply with the transparency requirements in the DSA?
Yes. I think we have when we talk about influencers, sometimes we tend to make the error to talk about successful influencers. Successful in the sense that it's their job. They gain enough money from their work so that they can say, okay, this is my full-time, part-time job. But actually, influencer as a term is already something where we know you can be a micro influencer. You can be an influencer that wasn't an influencer yesterday, but posted a video that has a lot of influence on what people buy, what people do. So I think the influencer as a term is not like perhaps not the ideal term to understand how social media works, because users make a lot of marketing communication, perhaps without the intention to have a cooperation with the company, but their intention doesn't change the fact that they have an influence. And I think some companies are very well known for using this. For instance, you'd see Apple. They don't need to pay influencers because people love to buy their new stuff and show off, the new Apple stuff. And this is one example. And the second example of influencers, where you see how different things can be, is looking at fast fashion marketplaces and influencers. Influencer is something you're spending a lot of money on buying fast fashion. Oh, you could get you could get more stuff with a little bit, cheaper, and you're part of the influencer program. So between this kind of influencer, the influencer that is doing reviews, and the influencer that is just showing off the latest product, we won't find like a common denomination. But what we would like to say is that if social media companies have the option to, of course, they know what's the content of the videos uploaded, and it would be an easy stuff to give transparency on corporations, official corporations, but also on what kind of products are being shown to minors, are being shown to users. So because even if the user is just reviewing stuff, I give you an example. You would have like minors that discover that well, it's great now in Vienna. You can buy all kinds of soda stuff, or there is like a new makeup or something like this, and they will start to show, you know, their makeup. Okay, they show their makeup. They don't aim at getting rich, or perhaps not even having a lot of views. But then we on the other side, we see problems we cannot explain. We see problems because perhaps the makeup that is being promoted is bad for minors, or it contains like hormones. We had this kind of problems. So, and then we don't really know. We have the problems, but we don't really know where it's coming from. And this is where I'd say, okay, we really need to understand which information is being spread on social media platforms. And part of the information spread on social media platforms is marketing communication. So I'd plead to say, okay, we need like a broad understanding of influencer, not to restrict people to show off, to you know, be happy about their makeup routine, whatever. They can, you know, they can post the videos, but to allow, you know, the world that is here, you know, for policy, for protection, to understand the dynamics of what's happening.
And maybe to add on that, I mean, how that could look like in practice could be maybe a variety of tags that are not really available right now in ad repositories. For example, if there is an official corporation, you should be able to tag it, to tag this type of content that you have been paid for, to show, for example, a specific type of sunscreen in your video. If you have paid for it, you should tag it with like a specific corporation tag. And then if the video is tagged properly, it will be shown in the ad repository, right? And the second point would be this kind of broader understanding of marketing communication. As soon as something has some type of marketing flair to it, or is, it should be understood as commercial content.
Okay, so the point is, when you say that the transparency obligation, as you said before, needs to be implemented correctly, and I see the whole discussion on influencer, not influencer. It's more about the content in this case. It's not about who posts it, which could be a great justification for the platform. So you you just like set that aside. So the transparency needs to be in relation to the consumer, so the child, for example. And should there be also an obligation of transparency towards, for example, a consumer association, like a report where companies, where social media platforms need to file in all the companies that have been working, that have been reaching children, so that in case there is a problem, it is the consumer association or whatever for them, because of course different jurisdictions have different rules, can find out what kind of process led to that and potentially start an action, having the right information to bring upon evidence and to show what's been happening behind the scenes of social media.
Yes, I think the good news is that we already have the tool that would allow for this. So the DSA has introduced that social platforms such as TikTok have a kind of repository, which is public. There is also research access possible, but there is also public access possible, which opens it up, you know, for instance, for consumer protection agencies to search for certain topics. The problem now is that these databases are not properly searchable. And we know, if we look at, you know, the options I get offered as a company, if I want to make advertisement on social media, there is like a great kind of UX design. I will have all kinds of options to search, to add, to refine, everything. If I compare this to the way that the ad repositories are currently made, you see a lack of engagement from the social platforms to make these databases easily searchable. For instance, you have like the database, the repository for influencer activities. You can only find the influencer activities if you put on the exact name of the influencer. And even then, we see that not always are all the videos from this influencer to be found. But also, why do I need to put the exact name of the user? Because perhaps I want, to search for who has made advertisement for alcohol. And it would be very an easy search request to say, I put the name of the alcohol company and they search within the influencer database and issue me the 3 videos. And then I can say, okay, well, no Austrian influencers have made advertisement on this topic. Could be an easy way out, but it's not possible. So I need to have all the influencers' name to make the proper searches, and then I have to go through all the videos, etc. So the ad repositories, they need to be easy to search for. And so far what we see is that they have made like the minimal requirements. It's there, you can search it, but it's not enough.
The
And not
commission is
even
in.
that. I mean, I'm
Sorry.
sorry, I didn't want to talk over you, but so the commission already found that the TikTok ad repository is in breach of the Digital Services Act. I mean, that's a preliminary finding from May, but that is something that we found as well in our investigation, that if they comply, they would comply with the absolute minimal standard, and it's just not usable for researchers, for consumer protection agencies, and for the authorities as well.
Which I was going indeed to ask, what were your thoughts on the finding of the commission at the beginning of May? So perfect, thank you so much. Yes, okay. In terms, I understand everything, and I absolutely, totally, 100% agree if that ever helps anyone, because I really believe, like, especially on social media, it's really difficult to set apart when, for example, a don't know, person posing in the gym just wants to take a picture, or whether they want to show off their new Gymshark and other brands are available, of course, new sports set, and whether you should buy it as well so that you have the same body or whatever. So I totally, totally agree with you. In terms of the study, given that the point that it makes is really perfection made truth, where do you think you could have like used other methodologies, or for example, which are the limitations of the study, and most importantly, where do you see it kind of going in the future? Which new areas would you want to explore in the future?
So I think the first thing is that it is a very exploratory study, explorative. It is qualitative. And in the future, I think we would also like to go a bit more on the quantitative side. For example, we tried to put a counter on how many ads we do see while scrolling on TikTok for 10 minutes. And it was close to impossible because the content was so poorly labeled. And sometimes influencer corporations and other types of commercial content are not labeled at all. So it was really impossible. But I think it would be helpful to be able to put a number on this type of research. So we would have something to like that is maybe a bit more placative, or like a bit more obvious to show how problematic the practices are on TikTok. So I think that that would be something that we would like to look more into in the future, as well as our goal was to kind of give an overview of all the problematic practices that we were able to find within this kind of very short time frame. So we were talking about a lot of different things. We were also talking about TikTok Live and the commercial practices that we found there. We were talking about the missing protection of minors in TikTok Live, but also when it comes to, for example, other commercial practices on TikTok. So minors should not be allowed to be able, or minors should not be able to purchase TikTok coins, right? However, TikTok doesn't verify their age. You can just kind of self-identify as above 18 years old, and then you're able to buy coins. And we know that children are on TikTok Live and that they're spending coins on TikTok and they're buying gifts, which is kind of a second tier virtual currency on TikTok that is basically used for gambling like practices. So it's like we looked at a lot of problematic practices, and so I think the attempt was to just give a broad overview of all the issues that we were able to identify and document. And I think a second step would be to go more in depth and look at all these phenomena a bit more in depth.
Mhm. And we forwarded the report to the European Commission, which has like a team working on TikTok and DSA. I assume they will use this knowledge. One of the developments that we worried about is that TikTok Live already is kind of a closed system, which has not been reported enough about. So a lot of people, either they don't know there is TikTok Live, or they don't know what happens on TikTok Live, or they associate TikTok Live perhaps with a live streaming of violent events, and perhaps with terrorism, this kind of topics, political topics, but they are not aware that TikTok Live is a development that needs to be looked at, because it's also a development used and perhaps even more for commercial activities. So looking at TikTok Live and how coins are being spent there, how you can, all the gaming features in TikTok Live, I think this is a topic we will continue to follow up on, because with AI and with all the developments now, we know that it's very quickly feasible to have a kind of live stream where you can just click and buy things. So it's like let's say it's a little change they can introduce, and the moment they introduce this has a powerful effect. And if we don't assure that beforehand already, the system, how this works, how money is spent, how limits are set, how age is assured, is properly working, we're opening like a box of a lot of problems. So TikTok Live is one topic we want to address and we will need to address. Age assurance is a topic that is difficult, but we will need to address this. So we see now, in Europe, all the different national endeavors saying, okay, social media starting from 15, starting from 16 or 18, and picking out ages. And it's a very complicated topic, because there is a balance to be drawn between privacy. Will we opt for something where you need an ID, but not everyone has an ID, especially minors very often don't have IDs. And do we want our IDs to be shared with social platforms? And if it's not an ID, it will be AI age estimation. So this is a topic, where we see again, a box of all kinds of possible problems and not easy answers emerging. So I think the easiest thing is to say, minors should not be allowed to use social media platforms without thinking it further. But as soon as you think it further, you see, okay, it's difficult. It's difficult. So this is like a second topic. And I think looking at, the TikTok study, of course, if funding was huge, and I'd say, okay, let's do the TikTok study again, but like with a proper and great funding. I'd say it would be very interesting to have like numbers, as Julia said, on how many ads are you seeing within 1 minute, within 2 minutes, but also numbers on that use the research access that is possible to have to TikTok, to analyze the content of videos and to say, okay, how many commercial content is being placed within videos that are not within the advertisement library, but just like this, what kind of advertisement is being done? Because we know that, especially for supplements, young boys taking supplements to be stronger. This is a problem we're dealing with. And there are a lot of questions where we need to know in which way has it been presented. So not only has it been presented, but what have they said? while they present this kind of product. So I think, in my ideal world, we'd have like the money, the funding to spend to go like in a quantitative way into the topic, to look at the content on TikTok. And yes, and perhaps, look at all the other platforms, because TikTok is like one platform. As always, when we do a report on TikTok, people say, yeah, but there's the same problems also on Facebook. And have you looked at Switch? And have you looked there? And yes, I think TikTok is like exemplary. It's a platform we can we looked at now, to show the complexity perhaps also of the topic. But of course, it would be great to look further into other platforms, such as Instagram, but also Snapchat, and YouTube, and to understand, okay, what are like the common denominations, and what can we do?
Terrific, this idea of looking at more platforms, because of course all younger people multi-platform. So I use TikTok for one reason, and then I use Instagram for another, and then I have different friends on different places. So of course, one needs to look at how these things kind of combine together. The example you made there about younger boys taking supplements, you may see something on Instagram, then it kind of gets recalled on TikTok, then someone on Twitch or whatever kind of tells you, oh, by the way, I'm also using this one. And then, of course, you spend a lot of money because you think that all together these products are going to do something to your body, when basically, potentially, you're just 13, which is also a great problem of our lives. We all go through it. That said, thank you so much for this explanation. This was incredibly interesting. I absolutely loved how you framed the problem, how you took it from a child's perspective rather than just looking at the average consumer, because in this case we're not looking at the average consumer, we're looking at the average child consumer, which is a bit different and should be taken into account, and not all unfair consumer practices, for example, legislation makes that difference. So thank you so much, Julia Krickel and Luisa Belzung, for joining me today, because Giacomo disappeared. We'll never know why.
Yes.
This happens. This is part of the beauty of live, non-live shows. That said, thank you so much. This was a great pleasure to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So much as well. It was really nice to talk.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you for the invitation. And we're happy that this topic got some space.
My pleasure. Vielen Dank. And this was all from Legal for Tech, the podcast.